What's shaking, cocktail fans? I'm Modern Bar Cart CEO Eric Kozlik. It's my job to hit the road and track down spirits and cocktail experts so that I can share their secrets with you. This time around, I head to historic Frederick, Maryland and chat with my friend Mark Viertaler. He's the head distiller at 10th Ward Distilling Company, and in this interview we focus on one of the world's most delicious and misunderstood spirits, absinthe. We talk about how it's made, how to drink it, and of course, we also cover a few delicious absinthe cocktails. Check it out. Mark, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So we're going to talk about absinthe today, as evidenced by this beautiful setup here.
Yes.
But why don't we start by having you introduce yourself to our audience and just give us a little brief bio.
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Mark A. Viertaler. I'm the head distiller here at 10th Ward Distilling Company here in Frederick, Maryland. Actually just celebrated my 1 year here.
Congrats.
So, yeah, thank you, which is very cool. Prior to that, I was a distiller and director of marketing for Boot Hill Distilling back in Dodge City, Kansas, which was my hometown. Before that, like a lot of other people, I came by the distilling and alcohol profession in a very roundabout way. Actually received my Bachelor of Science in Journalism from the University of Kansas, and when I graduated journalism school, was an investigative reporter for a couple of years, and unfortunately, that was around the time, early to mid 2000s, where a lot of ownership in newspapers decided that they didn't really want to spend the money for investigative reporters. Plus, we spent a lot of money and tended to make advertisers angry. And
there you go.
So I did what a lot of investigative reporters did and left the industry to get into public relations and marketing. My wife and I had gone back to our hometown, Dodge City, from the Kansas City area. And got a job at a national agricultural company as their director of communications, and did that for 7.5 years. And while I was doing that, after I had left journalism, I knew I wanted to keep writing. This was around the time, of course, the cocktail renaissance was starting to take up, that having the advantage of friends and family on the coasts was starting to even trickle into rural western Kansas. And so wanted to keep writing, wanted to keep behind the bar, did some bartending in college, and ended up working at a local theater, Live Theater, developed their bar program, and spent about 8 years working to develop a taste for craft cocktails out on the plains of western Kansas. And started a blog that was originally just a way for me to write about cocktails, ended up getting a lot of attention, ended up doing some freelance cocktail writing nationally and internationally. And around the same time, there were some farmers in Dodge who were getting ready to open up a distillery. And they reached out and they were like, hey, agriculture, booze. Do you want to come on board as like a consultant? Just come in and taste, and yeah, this is good. No, this is bad. And
sure.
Ended up deciding, I'd been at my job for a while and really wasn't very happy at it. And so I saw an advertisement pop up for that distillery for a part-time distiller and a part-time events manager, and called one of the owners that I knew and said, hey, how about bringing me on full-time as a distiller and your director of marketing? And he said, yeah, let's do it. So I walked away from my PR job and learned how to be a distiller, and did that for about 2.5 years. And 2.5 years in, the gentleman, John, who was the head distiller here at 10th Ward, was a friend of mine. Reached out, he got a job in Ireland, said, hey, I don't know if you're looking at leaving, but I think you'd love what 10th Ward is doing. I think you'd appreciate Frederick and the Maryland and the DMV scene. And my wife and I looked at each other and were like, well, let's see what happens. And interviewed Monica, our founder, fell in love with 10th Ward, fell in love with what they were doing, fell in love with Frederick, fell in love with the East Coast, and we're here and continuing to grow and establish ourselves here both in Frederick and 10th Ward.
Amen. Yeah, I feel like a lot of distilleries and distillers have been born out of people frustrated in cubicles.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, as I always tell people, I walked away, I took a pretty big pay cut, but my quality of life and the happiness has skyrocketed.
Yeah, indeed.
Also let me kind of pursue cocktails and bartending as a profession as well, too. So.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. So we have an absinthe-focused episode here, and we've kind of gone through your journey through distilling and how you've come from Kansas here to Maryland and 10th Ward. And what I'm interested in is kind of the overlap between Absinthe and 10th Ward, because to me, like, one of the cool things about 10th Ward is they're doing stuff that's, you know, a little bit different than a lot of distilleries, right? The slogan is ward off ordinary.
Right.
So I think, you know, mission accomplished. So maybe can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, what the 10th Ward approach to spirits and distilling is, and then maybe then we can segue into why Absinthe was such a no-brainer for, you know, one of the kind of anchor points in your lineup.
Yeah, definitely. Well, as you had mentioned, you know, we say our slogan, our motto, whatever it may be, is ward off ordinary. And it was actually one of the reasons that attracted me to 10th Ward is as a personal ethos, as a distiller, you know, I always tell people, a bunch of people much more intelligent than me have come before. They're the ones who figured out fermentation. They're the ones who figured out distillation. They're the ones who figured out these very strict and very effective ways to create product. And you, as us as a distiller and as a distillery, it would be a fool to not take into account their expertise. But we can then take that and we can move it a step forward, or maybe if not a step forward, make it a little bit more askew, make it a little bit more interesting. And so kind of the attitude that we take as a distillery is that we take traditional spirit styles and then we add our own unique twist to them. And we are purposeful with how we add those twists. I think one of the big challenges, and you see it maybe a little too often, especially with the massive growth of craft distilleries, is being different just to be different. Just because you're different doesn't mean that it's high quality.
Just because you have a pirate-themed distillery or a, you know, an 80s music-themed distillery doesn't necessarily.
Exactly.
It's a stand-in for value.
Exactly. Kind of. The number of people who have a kitschy grab or a well-designed label but have garbage juice in the bottle, that's not going to last that long.
Right.
And so that's kind of the attitude we take, is we kind of take it from a roots standpoint of, we want to know how these spirits were produced, why they were produced this way, dig into how that process has changed over the years, why it's changed. And then we look at it and go, how can we make this our own? How can we, again, adjust it to create something that people recognize as a high quality spirit, but maybe come at it in a way that they've never experienced it before. And whether that's utilizing local flavors or finding and combining different distillation and flavoring techniques, or whether that's, you know, taking kind of even like a fusion culinary attitude towards it of, all right, these have traditionally been these flavors. Can we create something greater than the sum of its parts by finding contrasting flavors within that framework? And so that's kind of what led us into, you know, Absinthe. Absinthe is this absolutely amazing, historical, beautiful, and incredibly misunderstood spirit.
We're going to dig into some of those kind of myths and apocryphal things for sure. But before we do, can you just tell people who are out there listening, like what are the things that were already in production at 10th Ward before you got here, and then some of the things that you've been able to now launch? Because I like what you were talking about just now with the culinary fusion approach and the, you know, different distilling techniques. It makes complete sense to me because I know your lineup, but like share some of the cool things that you've got. Yeah,
definitely. As of right now, we produce 4 main kind of what we call our core products. One of those being the Absinthe, another one being our smoked corn whiskey, where we actually smoke the corn itself, similar to you would, say, a smoked peat scotch. Then that goes in, and so we have these wonderful phenols. We also make what we call our Caraway Rye, which is a Maryland rye mash. So we pull back on the rye a little bit heavier on barley, so it's a bit softer. But then we actually take caraway seeds and toss them in during the mashing process. And those seeds stay in through the mashing, fermentation, distillation. And then the fourth one, which I was proud to be the one to introduce to the lineup, is our Genever-inspired gin.